Okay, so when we're talking about lye safety, this is a corrosive substance. I mean, this is an ingredient they use in drain cleaner. It is safe to soap with as long as you follow all of the safety precautions you can. All right, so we're gonna go through that. So in the previous video, I did mention containers and things like that, but let's quickly go over that. Your lye, when you mix it, it needs to be mixed in something that is lye safe. This lye is going to get extremely hot, up to 200 degrees, when you mix the lye into the water. So we have that heat resistant container that we need. We also need something that's not going to deteriorate from lye, and we need something that's not going to react with the lye and create a toxic gas. So in the last video, I did state that we need to use, if using metal containers at all, we're going to use a stainless steel. Do not use aluminums or anything like that. It will release a toxic gas. Okay, now when we do mix lye, it does release its own gas, which we're going to talk about ventilation. In the previous video, I did mention this is the container that I mix and dissolve my lye in and allow it to cool. That is the container we will be using today. There's multiple containers that you can use. Glass is not one that I would suggest using. The more times you mix lye in it, the lye starts to etch the glass, creating weak spots. It can explode and get lye all over the place, and that's dangerous, being a corrosive substance. It will ruin furniture, it will burn you, it will ruin your floor, so be careful when dealing with that. I choose to use a plastic container. It is heat safe. The way that you know your container is safe to use with lye, once again, we are going to need that 5 or 2 on the bottom, so make sure you're mixing this in an appropriate container. Okay, so this will be the container that we are mixing it in for safety purposes. I do have this lye wrote on here, do not touch, everybody is aware of. I'm the only one that really comes in my soap room, so it's not a huge concern for me, but everything should always be labeled. Also, the container I keep my lye in, now I keep my lye in a 5-gallon pail, so when I am fill that 5-gallon pail, I mean, my pails are all labeled. I know exactly what's in it. Anybody that comes in this room knows exactly what's in it, okay? So that is your containers and how to store your lye. All right, now safety for yourself when you're working with lye, because lye can splash. It does create fumes, things like that. So first of all, we have to have ventilation. I don't know if you can see up in that far corner, I do have exhaust fans in my window, so when we mix the lye, you're going to have some noise in the background because I'm going to turn that exhaust fan on. So I open the window and I turn the exhaust fan on. I have my soap door cracked open, so I have adequate intake of good air and outtake of the bad air. So I've created that draft through here for proper ventilation. Now, some people will take their lyes outside to mix because that's probably the most open atmosphere that you can have. However, for me, I have to carry it up the stairs and outside. It's just more of a hindrance if I trip on the stairs, or I do have dogs, so I don't take my lye in and out of my soap room. I mix it here. I have a proper ventilation system, and that works for me, but you can take your lye outside and mix it in the great outdoors as well. All right, so before we get started, you need to have gloves. Gloves are important. You know, you can get dish gloves, dishwashing gloves that are a lot thicker, that are going to protect you a little bit better. I use these. I can't work in the dish gloves as well, so these are the types of gloves that I use when I'm working with my soap or any products. Okay, so we put these gloves on. I always pull my sleeves over top of the cuffs like this. You also want to make sure that you have long sleeve shirt so that lye isn't splashing onto your arms and things like that. There's that barrier device before it gets to your skin. All right, so we're going to put on our gloves and we'll pull the sleeves over top so that I'm completely protected. There's nothing open, okay? Another thing that we want to keep in mind is our eyes. So we want to wear something over top of our eyes to protect our eyes in case anything splashes. You should have a pair of safety glasses or goggles to make sure that you can achieve that. So we wear these while we are making the lye and the soap process to make sure nothing is splashing inside of our eyes, and that protects our eyes. Okay, now you may want to have a mask on as well so that you're protecting yourself. The N95 is a particular mask, but you would need the one with the actual filters on it for toxic fumes to actually prevent you from inhaling those. So this isn't that effective because this is a particulate mask. The surgical masks are something that protects your droplets from coming out. So you need that ventilation, or you need to have a mask that actually has the gas filters on it, the proper filters for gases, okay? So those are your options there. All right, you also need to have distilled water, okay? So you're gonna measure out your distilled water into your container. Once we've done that, I kind of move that to the back so the water is not in contact with the lye. I will measure out my lye in this container, and then we will mix the lye to the water. Never pour water into lye. You will get this volcano effect that will spill lye all over the place, just like the science project you did as a kid. It kind of works the same way. So you always want to pour the dry lye into the water, not the opposite way around, and you won't get that volcano effect of it bubbling all over on you. Okay, so we are going to use that recipe that we printed out in the first one. It gives all of our measurements in ounces and grams. When I make cold process soap, I measure everything in grams. So for our water, okay, we're going to want the 299.37 grams. So we turn our scale on. So as you can see here, I have it set in grams. So we are going to measure out our 299.37. Okay, and that is distilled water. You don't want to be using water that is from your tap and stuff like that. It does contain the minerals and additives, chlorine, and all that stuff that they put in our water system. So you want to make sure that you're using distilled water when you do that. Now my lye, I keep in a 5-gallon pail. So we'll have to get that out and open that up. So as you can see, I have a 5-gallon pail here that is labeled with my lye and everything on it. We will use that to measure out our lye. So I'm just going to open this up. And I will use a measuring cup to scoop it. We're going to zero this out. For our lye, we wanted 131.45 grams. So we'll start adding it in. I always tap my container slightly because I find that there's a little bit of static in the lye, so you want to make sure that you're not dropping that all over your floor and stuff. Put the lid on, put it away so it's not out in the open. All right, so now we have our lye measured and we have our water measured. Okay, I'm going to use a stainless steel spoon to stir this because I want to make sure I'm not using anything that can react. You can use a heavy duty plastic spatula, things like that. I tend to like to use this, and I keep some napkins here. So I'm going to turn this fan on, so you're going to hear that in the background. So you're going to hear that fan, and right away I can feel the draft coming through here, sucking the air out that direction. So you're going to then, once you have your ventilation set up, or if you're taking it outside, take these outside to mix, it's fine as well, as we stated. And as I said, you're going to put the lye into the water. Okay, do not add the water into the lye. You will get that volcano effect, and you will get lye all over that will wreck surfaces, burn you, and is dangerous. So always lye in. Now, some soapers say, you know, put some in, stir it around, put more in. I've never had a problem just dumping it all in at once. But if you want, you can pour partial in. I find sometimes when I pour partial, because it heats up, the steam makes the lye stick in the bowl, so I just dump it all in. Okay, so as simple as we just pour it in there carefully, like so. Set that off to the side and just begin to stir. And that's it. And you're going to stir until this is completely dissolved. And I'll show you how hot this gets. So you want to completely just dissolve this. I can feel the heat coming off on my hand. It gets really hot. You might be able to, I don't know if you can see that in the video, you can see the steam coming off my hands, getting moisture on it. Let's take a temperature so you can see that. So right now it is 192. So it's fairly warm. You can see it's starting to get clear, so it's starting to dissolve. Once it gets warm, it doesn't take long, but you want to stir until it's completely dissolved. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Take my spoon, I'm going to set it in a dish because that's got to be washed anyways. And you can see the temperature's already dropped some. Okay, as I said, I mixed my lye the night before. I will set this up on the shelf away from any place that it can be knocked over or spilt. It is labeled so that nobody touches it, and I have a lid to put on it to make sure that it stays where I need it to be. Okay, now I will leave this cap open just because I want it to cool off some for now. Okay, but that helps any spilling or anything like that. And that's how easy it is to mix your lye. So anybody that was scared of mixing your lye for the soap making process, this really isn't that scary. Just make sure you're using the right equipment. Make sure that you are wearing your proper safety gear, because this does get really hot, so make sure. Okay, all right, so that's the end of this video. The next video will be on our colorants and fragrances.